Hey, I don't think the bell is completely rung yet, but we're gonna get started here because we got a lot we got to cover today. Yeah, we got everybody that's gonna be here today. We are streaming today. Typically, I don't stream the class, but we are streaming today because we got 3 folks that folks aren't here, and they had reached out and wanted to know if I would do that. So I decided to do it. What I want to start off with, take a look up here on the board. We need to finish up the Constitution discussion from the other day. Probably go through that pretty quick. If you still got your guides, that's what you want to study when those come through. So I'm gonna try to just go through real quick and hit the not enoughs. It's probably not do as much of the stories just for the sake of time. Maybe a few. I'll highlight it. So we get through that. We're going to talk very briefly on the last topic for this unit, and that is federalism. All right, we are not yet ready to put the states' rights discussion to bed. So we're going to finish that up with this issue of federalism. A couple of things that we need to be thinking about working on over the next couple of days. Number 1, discussion board 2 has been posted on Edmodo. The original post is not due. I put the 30th there, but I'll tell you what, with the Constitution test coming up, as long as I could get that before like Saturday, then I'm not going to sweat it. Just to give you a little more time with it, get through the Constitution test, then you can worry about it. So what that means is, this little video that I'm asking that you watch, you can even put that off until after the Constitution. All right, but you are going to need to watch that. This little video, it's a me video, but this little video is an addendum of an extension of what we're talking today that I just don't have time to cover in class. And it is something you're going to need to have viewed before you do the discussion board, because it's not going to, the discussion board prompt's not going to make a whole lot of sense if you don't check out the client bit. So make sure you check that out. It's already on the website. You can watch it whenever you want. If you want to watch it today or whatever, I don't care. But as long as I get your original post by Saturday, that's probably when I'll get on and check them. Then you'll be fine. Responses, get those early next week. Okay. Big thing is the Constitution test. Now, there were a lot of people really shocked by it. I mean, it's been on the calendar for about 3 weeks. Ever since we started school. You got to use it. That thing is there for you guys. It's there to help you. I know you guys are busy. I get that. That's why I do it. So you guys can look ahead, know what's coming, plan for it, not be caught off guard. I sent 2 emails. You should have 2 emails. Number 1 was sent this morning. Reminder of this, and with how this is going to be set up, it's all multiple choice. Then you got 1 response. And that response, I went ahead and gave you the prompt. I was feeling nice. So you guys were talking. Like that one. I'll give you the prompt. It's actually the prompt that's been over here on the board until like yesterday. It said, AP Gov, pay attention. So, I know some people jotted stuff down on that discussion. All right, so we want to check that out. And if you want to, we'll be working on some stuff in my 5th grade class, but we can work something out if you want to get. If you have an SPT or something, and you want to come down then and knock out your free response question, okay. I'll have the copies made in the morning. I have 2nd grade prep. I don't know if that helps anybody. What do you guys think? Yeah, that's an option. If not, 6th period. That's what we'll do. One of the questions is going to be like, literally, I mean, there's nothing like crazy. So they're going to be, if I can see a question of, how many representatives are currently in the United States House? 7,000. 4,000. That's it. Yeah, that's a tough question. Which article of the Constitution would you find the powers of the legislature? Yeah. So that's nothing like in depth there. It's just sort of a base multiple choice quiz on the Constitution. So don't look deeper than you have. All right. Any questions with stuff up on the board? All right. If not, let's finish up Constitution real quick. Does anybody remember where we left off? We made it to the amendments, right?
Yeah, we got to like.
I think we did 3rd. I think we left off at 3. And I had just got done saying that amendments 4 through 8 all have one thing in common: due process. And it really is the layout of the process. So when you start, okay, if William Lemon is our criminal, potential. Okay, so William is going to get searched. Well, before that search can take place, you need to have a search warrant. Well, Mr. Klein, what happens if like the cop runs up to him and it looks like, he's sure he saw him stuff a gun, in his shirt or something? So you have to get a search warrant? No. But you know what? That same question came before the court, and we'll be looking at it later on. Mr. Klein, Mr. Klein, Mr. Klein, what about, here's a juicy one. This is very current vintage. Maybe the one we find. What about if you what if you pull somebody over? You're a cop. You pull somebody over and you're pretty sure they're drunk. They're driving. What do you do? You're a cop. You pull somebody over. You think they're driving drunk. What do you do? Give them a field sobriety test. So what is that? Walk the line, right? Walk a straight line. You can touch your finger to your nose. You guys know that you can do that all you want. You can't use any of that as evidence in court. That's not evidence. I'm going to tell you right now, I've the worst balance of known man. I am perfectly sober right now, and I'm just kidding. Okay, wet live stream. I'm sorry. No, I'm honestly 100% sober right now. I'm not sure I could walk a straight line. I have that bad a balance. So no, you can't use that as evidence. But if you fail it, then the cop has, what's the next step? Breathalyzer. Hold on, breathalyzer. Can you refuse a breathalyzer? Yeah, you can. And what happens if you refuse the breathalyzer? Yeah, now they can take you into custody. Great. So they drive you down to the police station, and then what? Take you in the drunk tank? William said, well, what about a blood test? Now we're getting into some murky stuff here. Can you take a blood test without a surgery? No, but listen, Addison says it right though. Like if they say we're gonna take a blood test, and you say yes, then yes, you can do it. But what if they say no? What if you refuse the blood test? You need a warrant? But what if the BAC levels can dissipate over time? What if it takes a while to get a warrant? What if by the time they get the warrant, your BAC is down below the legal limit and you're fine? Then what? I'll tell you what happens. You go home. Free. Anybody feel chapped by that? I feel like I can. But the question remains: is should they be forced to get a warrant? They're going to take a blood test. I have an answer for that, but I'm not going to give it to you. All right. So amendment 4, the search warrant, making sure we know what is required for a search warrant. You got to have 2 things, right? Good search requires 2 things. One, the search warrant. To get a search warrant, you got to have what? Probable cause. All right, 5th Amendment. Some of you may have NE written here. Okay, let's make sure we have it all here. 5th Amendment is a loaded gun. There's a lot to it. 5th Amendment makes sure that you have the right against self-incrimination. You don't have to bear witness against yourself. Sometimes you may hear people say, I plead the 5th. Number 2, double jeopardy. This is a tricky one. You cannot twice be put in danger of the loss of life or limb for the exact same offense. So I have a lot of times people ask me, so if Brad gets arrested and in prison for burglary, he gets out, he commits burglary again, and does he just go scot-free? No. It's not the exact same offense. It's very rare that double jeopardy comes into play. I mean, it's got to, yeah, Emmett Till might be, but I mean, we're talking like the exact same offense. So if William is arrested and imprisoned for murdering Brad, and then 10 years later, Brad reemerges and it turns out he's perfectly fine, William is angry. And so then he murders Brad, this time for real. You know what? William is good to go because he has already been placed once in danger of the loss of life or limb for that crime. He cannot be in prison. Willie got really excited about this. I'm a little concerned about that. Like his eyes got really big, big smile. Like he's excited. We're going to win. Do we have any peer helpers in here? Willie, Kennedy, we may need to sit with I know, right? I'm not sure I will do either. Have somebody got.
What if you broke your eyes at the same time?
But did you take exactly the same thing?
What if you did?
I mean, theoretically, you'd be fine.
What if you sold a TV?
But is it the exact same
Exact same.
It's got to be. I mean, we're talking down to the letter. It's got to be the exact same.
Like,
so
like same.
It's very like this is rarely going to be enforced. So all right, Fifth Amendment also gives you what they call the due process clause, which is saying due process needs to be adhered, and this is a big deal because what this means is that at any point between your suspicion to your conviction to your punishment, if a police officer or a judge or anybody involved in this decision does not cross a T or dot an I, then you're probably going to maybe be let go at some point. Like you really have to follow the letter of the process. If you conduct the search and you didn't have a warrant, fine. If you questioned somebody and didn't give them the option to have a lawyer present, fine. Fine. It's you got to follow that letter. Really got to do it. Last part of the Fifth Amendment is the takings clause, or as it's better known, eminent domain. So we got into this with summer assignment. This lock agree. So this says that the government can take your property, but only when they offer you just compensation. Now, it can be a little bit of night. For my own personal life, I grew up. Some of you, if you went to 1812 last year, I always love to drive by and say, I grew up here. And it's right on State Road 37 when you get close to the Marion Airport. So if you've ever been by the Marion Airport, they got these big strobe lights that warn planes don't fly into their house, which we always appreciated. But they were pretty far away. Well, they wanted to expand that runway to bring in bigger planes, which would have pushed those strobes basically like into my room, which I was adverse to. And so we said, no, we're not okay with this. And the Marion Airport, which is a municipal airport, which means that it is a government entity, just like Franklin, said, you don't like it, huh? Well, we're going to offer you a check that we've determined is the just compensation for your property, and then we will bulldoze your home to the ground. Yeah, exactly. We gave you the check. We did the land survey. Here you go. Here's the value of your home. Go. Luckily, we were able to fight it, and they acquiesced. But for a little while there, we were pretty sure we were moving. It was junior high, and I was this close to moving to Washington State, actually. So just think, what if that happened? Would I be right here, right now? Willie also got really excited about that. But no, that's where we're going. My mom had a teaching job lined up there. Say Libby. All right, so Sixth Amendment. Big thing that was missing in the Sixth Amendment, if you missed this one, is that this is where you get the right to an attorney, or the right to counsel as it's written in the Constitution. Right to an attorney. That's a big deal. We'll look at an example of this when we get later on in the year of a guy who wasn't given that. It's actually a really sweet story. One of my favorite stories about that. Seventh Amendment, Sixth Amendment, Seventh Amendment, people get confused on this whole jury trial. The Seventh Amendment is really the trial by jury one. If you are accused of committing a federal crime, a national crime, you are guaranteed a trial by jury, and it'll be a grand jury, which means 12 people are going to be on that jury. If you are at a state court, you don't have that guarantee. How many of you have heard of Judge Judy? Okay, this is what I call Judge Judy courts. You walk in there, there's no jury present. It's just this angry Italian woman who's going to yell at you about somebody stole their dog and didn't get back. We don't need to have a jury trial for that, so only federal. Eighth Amendment, big thing there is obviously cruel and unusual punishment. The Ninth Amendment is, I call it the catch-all. You know, literally what this is it's these, you know, these guys sitting down, let's write down the rights, holy moly, I'm getting, you know, writer's cramp. We're just tipping the iceberg, and we're going to write them all down. We're going to have 25 pages of parchment. What do we do? And James Madison says, hey, why don't we just put the 9th Amendment in there and says, yeah, you got these rights, 1 through 8. But that's not all the rights. You have other rights. Which is great. What the heck does that mean? I mean, that's a slippery slope, right? Anything, right? It could be anything if you can find a way to justify it. But that's the catch. You know, a good example is right to privacy. Do we have the right to privacy?
Yes.
Yes, there's no guess.
How explicitly we do. So
Yeah, it's not written anywhere. That word's not anywhere in the Constitution, but maybe we do. Maybe that's one of those 9th Amendment.
Well, I guess the warnings.
Now you're getting to something special. That assumes privacy. No, that's good.
Privacy by.
Let's take a pen in that. We'll come back. Okay, 10th Amendment. We gotta make the states happy. We're gonna mention the 10th Amendment again here soon. So anything not listed in the Constitution, there's 2 parts here, right? If the Constitution doesn't say this is a power of the national government, and if the Constitution doesn't say states are not allowed to do this, the states do. So declaring war. The Constitution says Congress has that. States don't. Thank you. Okay. But like speed limits, we talk about BAC levels. The Constitution doesn't say anything about that. I don't think James Madison was too worried about how fast old Chester was going to, you know, ride down the road. So, you know, that's a good example of reserve powers. All right. I'm gonna kind of hit and miss some of these. If you have questions on some of them, please let me know. I'll give you a few easy ways to remember them. 14, 15, or 13, 14, 15, your Reconstruction Amendments, right? But I always say the easy way to remember those is free citizens vote. Free citizens vote. 13th Amendment gives freedom to black slaves. 14th Amendment grants them citizenship. 15th Amendment gives black men the right to vote. A lot of people miss that. You can't just say it gives blacks the right to vote. Did not give black women the right to vote. Give black men the right to vote. But 13, 14, 15, free citizens vote. The 17th was one that was tied into the earlier part of the assignment. Now popular election of senators. So we're going to let the people directly vote. Abe Lincoln would have loved that. 18 and 21. I always say, you know, you can't drink at 18, but you can at 21. So, at the age of 18, you can't drink. At the age of 21, you can. Of course, for the amendments, you can't drink at 18, prohibition. But you can at 21, which repeals it. Yeah, right. All right. So the 19th Amendment. What's that do, ladies? Right to vote, which is distinctly American. It's funny, we were talking about that in a minute. Absolutely. All right, so 23 is one that catches a lot of people. The way I always remembered it was DC 23. Washington, D.C. gets 3 electoral votes, D.C. 23. You saw a multiple choice question about which amendment? D.C. 23. You look completely. I'm hitting and missing here. I'll go back and cover some if you want me to, but I'm kind of, for the sake of time, trying to mix some things. 22 FDR, right? Like, you know. Yeah. 2 terms for a president. 22, 2 terms. 22, 2 terms. Yeah, 24. I always say I wouldn't touch you with a 24-foot pole. I know it's cheesy, but it works. 24-foot pole. I feel like 25 is kind of a big deal. Give all 18-year-olds right to vote, right? Thank you. I just wanted to see if anybody was paying attention. 25th Amendment is not the right to vote. That's 26. 25 is always 26 is 18 years old. 25 is the one we hear about. I feel like a lot. 25th Amendment is the president is like mentally indisposed. We can it's how he can be replaced. And then 27th is the original First Amendment. Remember we talked about that the other day. So no congressional period. Any of the rest of those that I didn't hit that you feel like you'd like me to mention? Just make sure you're getting clear on.
16, I got it wrong. I said
Income tax. Because Article 1 gives them the power to tax. So 16's got to be no, I actually didn't mention. That's what I'm talking about. Any of these others that you want me to clear up for you? Yes, yeah, we call it the lame duck amendment. You know, we instead of having almost 6 months until we have a new president, let's squeeze it down to a little over a month.
So I don't know the article.
See. 24 football tax.
Wait, we have to know the article and section.
Yes, probably not, you know, all the sections. The only specific section I can envision you guys need to know is like Article 1, Section 8. That's got to be. That's all the powers of Congress. Free citizens. 24 football tax, DC 23, 22 2 terms, 22 2 terms. So the only like one that I can see they knowing a specific section.
So
Article 1, Section 8.
First Amendment is basically the branch of the government.
First article.
First article.
Difference.
The second article is like the power, right?
First, Article 1 is legislative, Article 2 executive, Article 3 judicial. Okay, let me go through this federalism topic. I can do it pretty fast. I know that you guys would probably rather use the time for some Constitution study, but I do want to get through a couple of things here. Okay, so bear with me. This would be a good time, and I feel like I've reminded you a couple times, but a good time to remind you that we don't take a ton of tests in here, but you do have the Constitution test. Beyond that, you have the midterm and the final. Midterm will be right before fall break. Final will be obviously right before the end of the semester. Stuff that we go over. I haven't made you take notes. I don't use a lot of the PowerPoints and things like that. It's more of a college seminar. But you know, I guarantee you, you're going to need to be able to define federalism when you take the midterm. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right. So before we get to this, I want to do a quick review of a couple different types of centralization. Right. Pretty much every government, regardless of what kind of government it is it communist? Is it monarchy? I don't care. Whatever type of government it is. There is some issue of centralization. When I say centralization, what I mean by that is power. Okay, how centralized is the power? So, give you a couple different examples here. All right. Number one, there are some governments around the world that are what we would call unitary governments. And in a unitary government, the power is almost entirely centralized. Centralized, okay, my arms are here, not centralized. In a unitary government, they are centralized into one person. Monarchy, dictatorship, tyrant, so then you've got the other side of the spectrum. Power is completely uncentralized, if you will. It's way out here. And I think the proper term for this, and it is a term that we have heard in this class already, it's confederate or confederation. Yeah, so the Articles of Confederation. Yeah, there was like that one national legislature, but I think we saw plenty of examples of it not having much power. Power is decentralized, right, into the hands of the individuals. So then we got unitary, confederate. We need something in the middle. And that something in the middle is a federal government. Now, sometimes the government is referred to as the national government, sometimes it's referred to as the central government, sometimes it's referred to as the federal government, and the federal government is generally how I refer to it as, because I think that it shows us how this is set up. In a federal government, you have the power split. Right. So let's make sure we understand what's written up here on the board. It all comes back to centralization, unitary, completely centralized, confederate, there is no centralized or very little. And federal, right in the middle, you've got different tiers of power. So which of the three does the United States have? Yeah, we have a federal government. You know, the national government has a lot of power. But we have a tier of government, the states, that also have their own power. And actually, we have a third tier of government in the United States. What is that? Frankton. Local government. Frankton has a town. They make decisions. They set water rates. I mean, we're talking about life, changing decisions here, but they make decisions. So local government is another tier of power. So I would call this split, or tier seems to be the commonly accepted word. So I'm going to write tiered up here. I think that that's pretty important. All right, so honestly, like the last thing that I wanted to mention here is what this tiered government looks like. Okay, so now we're talking powers. And in a federal government, we see different kinds of powers that belong to each of these tiers. Right? One example of these powers are express powers. These belong only to the national tier. Now, an express power, as it's sometimes called an enumerated power, is a power that is expressly given in the Constitution. So declare war would be an express power. It is expressly given to the national in the Constitution. There's no debate over it. There's no discussion. It is there. Second kind of power that we see are what we call implied powers. Once again, these belong to the national, and even more specific, they belong to Congress. In Article 1, Section 8, very last clause says, it's listed all these things that Congress can declare war, like taxes, so on and so forth, regulate commerce. At the very end it says, and Congress may do anything which is deemed necessary and proper. Congress may do anything that is deemed necessary and proper to fulfill these listed powers. So, for example, the Constitution doesn't say anything about having individuals who have the job of going out and determining the value of property. The Constitution doesn't say anything. So does Congress have the power to hire someone whose job it is to go out and assume the value of property so that they can tax it? Well, it's not written in there. But the Congress could argue that it's necessary to do that, to have somebody to do that, so that they can fulfill their power of levying taxes. How can we levy a tax if we don't know the value of property? So we also then have the power to go out and hire someone to go and be. Alexander Hamilton and his national bank. Does Congress have the power to open up a national bank? Technically, no. But you could argue that since they have the power to coin money, collect taxes, all these things with money, that they need somewhere to put it, right? So maybe they also have the power to build a bank because it's necessary for them to fulfill those powers. So I'll also write this up here. A1, section 8. I'll write the word elastic. Because that word sometimes is used here. Around Thanksgiving time, when I know I'm getting a lot of food, I put on, stretching. An elastic waist. So that as I eat, I stretch. Yeah, same idea here. Necessary proper clause, you can go a lot of ways with it. Stretch it out. About the elastic clause. All right, don't forget the states. This is the 10th Amendment. These are the reserved powers. They belong. States. Again, we talked about BAC, we talked about speed limits. One of the things that you'll see in this fiscal federalism clip, though, I'll give you blood alcohol content as an example. And I talked to some groups about this earlier, I think, right? Talked about how it was 0.1 in South Carolina. Yeah. And it was 0.0, yeah. It was 0.08 in Indiana, and there was a group called MAD, Mothers Against Drug Driving, who wanted it to be a national standard of 0.08, which Congress doesn't have the power to do. But they used what's talked about in here as a way to get that done. That's pretty important. All right, lastly, we do have a few things which we call concurrent. And this is a power that belongs, both the state and the federal have this. One great example of this are taxes. Collecting taxes is actually a concurrent power. If you have a paycheck, if you have a job where you get paid a paycheck, they take federal tax and they take a state tax out. Sales tax is usually determined by the state you live in. Some states don't collect state income tax. Why do you think so many pro athletes live in Florida? Florida doesn't have a state income. So if your permanent residence is in Florida, you only pay the federal, you don't pay the state. That could be some serious money, right? I mean, that could be some real money. What do you think a lot of old people move to Florida? Is it just the heat? I mean, that could, it's great. It's a good deal. All right. So it is an important thing that we mentioned. We got a little crunched on time here. Normally we would dig a little bit deeper into this, but I think we sort of spread a lot of this into the discussions that we've had in the class thus far, AAC and all that stuff. So I think we've got some of this in there, but I want to make sure that I covered it a little bit here. Make sure that you watch this fiscal federalism bill, because it covers a lot of this whole relationship between the states and the national. We've talked about that ad nauseum in this class. So much of what we've covered so far has come down to this: who has more power, the states or the national? If you think about it, the Articles of Confederation, that it comes down to that issue. The ratification comes down to that issue. The existence of the Bill of Rights comes down to that issue. And today, we are still dealing with that issue. Who has more power, states or national? So I want to make sure that we that I got it clearly into you today, and then we'll be bringing it back to you over the course of the week. All right, so I'm done. You've got some time here. You can ask me questions. You guys can talk amongst yourselves. You guys can use some of this, but this is us moving forward. So, yeah, what did you think of yesterday? Different, right? Not the last time we do that. Okay, I'm done. That's all I got. You know, it's something you might have to know something like it. It's something to do. I'm gonna ask you something. I would ask you, where do you find national security? What do you think? They're both Article 6. It's just Article 1, Section 8. Bet you guys are gonna keep an eye on that unit count.
Yeah. They could always be cut off. I was 100% cut off.
Yeah.
It's marijuana.
Orange.
Oh,
Well, they're gonna have to. We're still gonna go to second. Honestly, what would that be? We're still gonna they have to choose. So, when I read this now. Is anybody thinking that they might try to come down during an SBT to do their written? Because I can write you passes now.
what
so
happens
it's
if
not-
we don't get done in this class? Like during this period.
Yeah, you know, depends on what you got. 7th period.
Seventh period, I'm in the library.
No, I don't mind that. I don't mind that. But
It's like a class.
I can tell you this much. I'm not giving you more than two class periods tomorrow to get this done. And it needs to be either, you know, you gotta play this right. Like, I'm not gonna have you do half of the multiple choice and then go, and then 3 periods later come back and do the other. That's not gonna work for me. But if you want to come down during an SBT, like Lucy's gonna come down 2nd period to get a written. And all she has to do during this class is do the multiple choice. That I'm fine with. But it's got to be something like that. Or if you have 7th period SBT, or you're in the library, whatever it is, like you can do 6th and 7th, and that's fine. Now I'll have a class during 7th period, so you'll have to just kind of deal with that. But that's fine. But none of this like half the multiple choice and then leave it for 3 periods and come back and do it. And if you come down to do the written during a period, you need to finish that in a period. That should be. You know the problem.
How long is there a specific, like, how long the talk needs to be?
You know, when it comes to writing, I appreciate like formal writing. You know, the term, I swear to God, if the term fleek or lit or anything of that ilk is in this written prompt, I'm going to flunk you. Okay. No, I expect you to write like you have prepared and you thought about it, you know, write as though you would answer a college question. I will say this though, I'm not a fan of fluff. That doesn't impress me. It doesn't impress me. I subscribe to the ADQ method. That was direct. Answer the question. I mean, you know, and that, but like, doesn't show me. That just shows me that you're gifted in the art of BS. Doesn't show that you have any knowledge. It doesn't show anything other than that, you know, you can fill up an answer sheet. Now then, I mean, it's not like I'm gonna count points off. It's just gonna take me forever to wade through the bowl so I can get to your answer. You don't need to do that. I'm much more impressed when somebody can give me a well-written, concise.
Now it's another question. How is there a federal ban on it's in federal lands?
You know, it's funny. The Constitution does say that Congress and the national government can do what is needed to promote the general welfare. So national drug laws have been passed under the idea that it's part of the general welfare. Plus, it can be argued that it's commerce, and Congress is part of regulating technology.
And that, so technically, like Colorado is illegal, right?
Technically, yes, but
There's not really
during the Obama administration, President Obama instructed the Justice Department, the Attorney General, to not pursue anything involving marijuana. If the states want to make it legal by popular vote, which is what Colorado did, then let them do it. But people decided.
Like
Technically, it is illegal. Per national.
There's like half Colorado. You can do. So like,
Yellowstone, you
but
could open up a marijuana tent at Yellowstone.
but now they've changed the direction.
I mean,
Well, they said
I know that President Trump, reversed some of those decisions, but Jeff Sessions doesn't seem to be too interested in doing it. So much to the anger of President Trump. So. It's just amazing. Like he'll go on and he'll just be like, if the Attorney General would do his job, and I'm like, you gave him that job. He's your guy.